Hello, and welcome to Virtual Birding. Spring migration is now over and we're into summer, so we're going to start looking for some specialty summer birds here as the summer progresses. And we're going to start with a warbler that is quite rare and special, the Swainson's warbler. So we'll be looking for a very, very brown warbler with that little bit of a rusty cap and a big bill, and a very, very neat bird. So where we'll be looking for this is Great Dismal Swamp National Wildlife Refuge, and particularly we'll be at Jericho Lane. There's actually a trailhead here at Jericho Lane, but we won't be taking the trail out onto the marshes. We'll be actually walking back the road that we came in on and looking along the swamp for the warblers. Now, I don't necessarily find this area to be particularly dismal, but it is a swamp, so we'll be looking for a lot of species. And before we go down the lane, there's a few species calling that we haven't seen before, so we'll start with that. And here's a good one here, nice prairie warbler. You can hear it singing in there, which is very nice. Early summer, there's still a lot of songs, so we'll be birding by ear quite a bit today. And you can hear that very buzzy prairie warbler song that lets us know it was here. And hopefully this is a species we'll see a few of today. They tend to be common in this area. Although I do not know that it is going to be our most common warbler species, as the one on the sign on the lane tends to be more common here. And here we have it here, a prothonotary warbler. Absolutely golden jewel of these swamps in these southern forests. Very, very beautiful. I've heard it was an alternate name for it is golden swamp warbler, which I think is actually maybe more appropriate. As you can hear, they are also very loud, so we should have no trouble hearing them as we walk along the trail. But always a delight to see. Alright, there's another bird that's been calling that is a little bit harder to see, but we'll give it a try over here in this corner. There you can hear it now. There's a white-eyed vireo. They tend to be pretty skulky, but if we kind of scan along, maybe we'll get a chance at it. It's definitely singing in here. But now it's much closer. And there it is. Nice white-eyed vireo. And there it zips off. Yeah, that one was really just sort of moving through pretty quick as it sang. Probably going along the border of its territory. So I'm glad we got a look at it. And here's another prothonotary warbler. Or maybe the same one that we just saw, but there's definitely another one singing there that wasn't the one we were looking at. So there's definitely multiple prothonotaries in this area. White-eyed vireo is still singing quite loud. They have a pretty funny song as far as I'm concerned. Definitely a lot of pop to it. Here's another prothonotary warbler, maybe the one that we heard singing while we were looking at the other one. As I said, they are very likely to be quite common along here. I don't know that we'll stop to look at all of them, but maybe a couple more. They are an incredibly beautiful bird, and one definitely worth stopping for every once in a while. But alright, now on to the main mission of finding Swainson's warbler, which I think is going to be pretty tough. They're definitely here. There's at least 2 territories I know of along this road, but they, like the white-eyed vireo, can be pretty tough to spot. They tend to stay in a lot of cover. But there's actually a mammal up there, and I believe that's a marsh rabbit. It's got those really kind of small, rounded ears. It's a little darker in color than I would expect an eastern cottontail. Can't really see its tail very well, but even the head shape's kind of different than I'd expect for a cottontail. But I just did hear a yellow-billed cuckoo calling, so let's see if we can spot that. I've heard a few so far already, but this one kind of sounds a little bit closer, maybe visible. And I do think I see it up there. Yeah, through a bunch of leaves, but there's a yellow-billed cuckoo. Hopefully it'll turn its head, give us a look at that yellow bill. There you can see a bit of it. Maybe not the best look, but definitely identifiable. Alright, and it looks like that marsh rabbit darted off, so we're not going to get another look at it. They tend to be pretty secretive as well, like the Swainson's Warbler, so I think that's a pretty lucky find. But yeah, the Swainson's Warblers tend to be pretty tricky here. Sometimes you can hear them singing. A lot of times when I come to look for this bird, I actually come looking much earlier in the month of May, when they're a little bit more vocal, but hopefully there'll still be some singing today. We'll have to find out. It's definitely going to be a lot of walking along this gravel road and just keeping our ears open, and if we hear anything, we'll scan around a little bit and hope we can find it sitting perched up, because they don't really just hop out into the open. This guy does hop out in the open. You're going to have a nice prairie warbler, and as you can see, it's actually carrying food. It's picked up food that it's taken probably to a nest. Probably not fledglings, but I would think a nest. So some of these birds already have nestlings, and at that stage it can get pretty tough to find birds because they sing a lot less. Kind of like the Swainson's Warbler territory we're in now. I can hear it chipping up ahead, but I don't hear it singing, which is maybe going to make it pretty tough to spot. But it sounded like it was about right here, but it stopped chipping. So I'm not too sure. There is a little bit of movement in there though, and that's a common yellowthroat. Did see a little bit of brown on that back. I got pretty hopeful, but yeah, looks like a common yellowthroat, so I don't know. We'll keep moving. A chipping Swainson's Warbler is never very easy to find, so I don't think we have a great chance at that bird, so we'll hope that we get the other one at the second territory. If not, we are going to end up coming right back this road. This is not a loop. This is sort of just one way out and then back. So we will have another chance going through this territory. So hopefully it'll be singing then if we don't get the one out a little bit further. As you can hear, definitely a ton of prothonotary warblers still in here. Definitely perfect habitat for them. There's a reason it's on the sign that's out on the road when you pull into this lane. They are quite common. Let's see, there is something up there, but this is something a little different for us. We have a dragonfly. It's a swamp darner. Oftentimes they're just flying around, but here early in the morning, sometimes you'll just see them sitting still, which is pretty cool. And we have some white-breasted nuthatches calling, and sure enough, there's one way up at the top of the tree. Pretty upset about something. Making a lot of racket, but yeah, not sure about what. So we'll keep moving. There's another bird up in the tree, and no surprise, it's a prothonotary warbler, nice and gold even in the shadows. So that bird's moved on. And there's a barred owl that just sang off in the distance, or called, I guess you would say. Pretty distant, pretty far away, so I don't think we're going to be able to see it, but that's still pretty cool. Wood thrush singing in there as well. Through all this thick stuff, wood thrush is going to be pretty tough to spot. We've got a couple of spots coming up on virtual birding that I think we have a chance at wood thrush again. So maybe we'll get it there. A lot of birds calling in here. Wood thrush is really going, the white-eyed vireo, a couple barred owl. Oh, very close pileated woodpecker, but I don't see it. There goes a red-shouldered hawk starting to call. Also sounds distant like the barred owls. We got another dragonfly here, maybe the same, but nope, it looks like a female great blue skimmer. The males are very blue like the name would suggest, but the female are kind of paler with that chestnut on the shoulder. Very, very neat. Got another bird up here hopping along. Pretty quick, but there's a female hooded warbler, so that's a new one for us. Hopefully we'll be able to track down a male. It's another bird I would expect here. The The warblers in general here are sort of what I refer to as some of the southern warblers that breed sort of further in the south. There's a bird up there. Prothonotary, not a great look, but thankfully we've seen good looks at them before. But yeah, these southern warblers like hooded warbler, worm-eating warbler, Swainson's warbler, even Prothonotaries are all the types of birds that we're looking for now. They would have been pretty tough to see at Biggest Week and impossible at Whitefish Point, essentially. So this is a good place to get them. And there's actually another one that often breeds in the south but can breed in the north as well, a pine warbler. It's very, very yellow underneath with those bright white wing bars. This one's very quiet. They're typically one of the first warblers to arrive. So my guess is this one already has a nest with nestlings and probably isn't doing a lot of singing anymore. There's actually a couple pine trees right around in this area, probably only about 3. And that's really all these pine warblers need. But here's our male hooded warbler singing. So let's try to see if we can't find that. Should be perched up, and I think I've got him. Yep, nice, beautiful male hooded warbler. That is one of my absolute favorites. Doesn't get much better than that. So very cool. Got both the male and the female in here. Very fun. Now we're getting up pretty close to this Swainson's warbler territory, so I'll have to keep our ears open for that. Definitely a lot of birds singing in here, and there it is. There's the Swainson's warbler singing. So let's hurry our way on up there to where that bird's singing and see if we can't get a look at it. I saw a bird just fly across, but it didn't stop, so hopefully that wasn't our bird. I don't hear it anymore. It's not good. There it sings, and actually I think I see a bird sitting up there, and there it is. Swainson's warbler, just as advertised. If you find it singing, a lot of times they'll perch up out in the open, and that's how you find them. And that's awesome. Yeah, very, very difficult bird. Yep, and there it drops off. That is lucky. That is a tough bird to see, so I'm pretty happy with that. I think we'll start making our way back. I don't hear it singing anymore, so it's probably off doing whatever it's doing, and we just caught the perfect little moment for it to pop up and sing and be visible, because a lot of times they're not. Very, very difficult bird. That's a bird on my personal life list that was very, very difficult to get. I spent a lot of time looking for it and not finding it. And then actually the first time I saw it was during the winter in the Yucatan in Mexico. I had one hop onto the path and basically hop right onto my foot. So pretty strange way to get it. Got a car going past. But yeah, that's definitely not the sort of normal experience, but my first one was, yeah, actually in Mexico. And then later, when I was working a bird job in Alabama, we caught a few of them during migration. So actually the first ones that I saw in the US were in hand, not sort of found out in the woods. And actually, the only place that I've ever seen this bird in the US is here. So this is definitely a good spot for them. I have come here and only heard them, but it is a spot that you can definitely get looks, especially if you're early enough in the year. It does get very, very hot here in the summer. And so it's important to be here very, very early, like we are today, and typically earlier in the year. If you show up about halfway through June, you don't have a good chance. But there was a worm-eating warbler. That's another bird that's pretty tricky, so definitely worth stopping. I think I see it perched up in there, and sure enough, not so dissimilar from the Swainson's warbler, really. A lot of the same colors, a somewhat similar shape. The bill's a little smaller, but instead of that sort of rusty crown, that bird's got those sort of black and buff stripes. They don't actually eat worms, but they do spend a lot of time on the ground, and I think that's where they get the name. And actually, here's a little black and white warbler behind us. Looks like a female. She's sort of fluttering her wings and looking very nervous. So I kind of suspect maybe we're near a nest. So just in case that's true, it seems like the worm eating's moved off, so we'll give her some space and keep making our way back. So yeah, that is another warbler. We've had an absolute ton of them here. There's very, very few breeding warblers in this area that we didn't get. I think American Redstart is the only one that I can think of that should be here that we didn't get. But that's alright, we've had those pretty good the last couple times we've been out for virtual birding. So yeah, another nice day. There goes the car again. I think that guy was actually out here looking for mammals, and on my way out, I saw him sitting on the road in his car with a black bear just right next to his car. So if he was looking for mammals, pretty successful. Definitely a few of those out here as well, although we didn't see one while we were walking, which is honestly probably alright. But yeah, now we're back at the trailhead and back at the car. So that'll be our bird walk for today. So for our walk summary, we had 22 species of birds, 1 species of mammal, and 2 invertebrates, both dragonflies, in 0.6 miles walking and 1 hour and 15 minutes birding. And we saw our target bird, the Swainson's Warbler. So we'll have our species list, and as always, HO indicates herd-only species, and N indicates new species for our virtual birding life list. And as always, I will pick a bird of the day, and it can be the target bird, but doesn't have to be, and today it is certainly the target bird. Swainson's Warbler is a very, very special bird, and one that I have seen a very, very few times, so definitely a really special one, and definitely my bird of the day. For our virtual birding life list, we're up to 172 species of birds with 8 new today. With 1 new species of mammal, we have 8 species, and then 2 species of amphibians and reptiles, and also 2 species of invertebrates with our 2 dragonflies today. Thanks for coming out on this virtual bird walk with me. I hope you enjoyed all of these amazing warblers as much as I did. I hope to see you next time, and happy birding!